Hello, and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video, we're continuing our look at the Time Spiral set, and we're going to look at Reality Fracture, which is the blue and red deck. So let's have a look at the deck list. So we have 18 creatures, 11 sorceries, 3 artifacts, 4 instants, 24 land, and a mana curve off to the side there. Might seem quite high, but there are ways around it, as we will see. So, let's talk about the theme of the deck. It's one I really like. So Time Spiral introduced this keyword called suspend, and basically a lot of the cards in the deck utilize suspend. So suspend is basically an alternative casting cost. When a suspend card is in your hand, you can pay the suspend cost. It gets exiled with a number of time counters on it equal to its suspend value. So, for example, Deep Sea Kraken here has suspend 9, so it goes out with 9 counters on it. At the start of your upkeep, you take a time counter off it. When it has no more time counters, it comes into play, and if it's a creature, it has haste. So yeah, it's basically a way of setting something aside and like, oh well, that'll show up in a few turns. And yeah, it's a mechanic I really like. It's basically a good way of ensuring that you can essentially play an expensive card early on. The downside being, of course, your opponent knows it's coming and can sort of plan about it because it still comes into play. It still gets cast. Technically, you just don't pay the mana cost, so it can still be countered. But overall, I really like suspend. As I say, this deck sort of uses it quite a lot. So let's talk about the 2 rares of the deck. So one of them is, as I've already mentioned, Deep Sea Kraken. So 7 and triple blue for a 6/6 that's unblockable, and it has suspend 9 for 2 cards in a blue, which is a lot. But whenever an opponent plays a spell, if Deep Sea Kraken is suspended, you remove a time counter from it. So, if your opponent starts playing spells, obviously this ticks down a lot quicker. And when you finally get a 6/6 unblockable down, like that's you're doing okay, I think. So yeah, I think it's an okay rare to have in terms of showing off suspend. So kind of the opposite of the Deep Sea Kraken is Pardic Dragon. So 6 mana for a 4/4 flyer with like a fire breathing ability. Has suspend 2 for only 2 red, which is very good. However, when an opponent plays a spell, if it's suspended, you put a time counter on Pardic Dragon. So, well, it is a May. Actually, your opponent gets the choice, but they're pretty much always going to do it. So this is the downside of playing it, of suspending it early, is that if your opponent keeps casting spells, then this will take longer to get out. So this one's not as ideal in my opinion. I think Deep Sea Kraken's a little bit better, but it still puts a lot of pressure on opponent to like keep casting spells to kind of keep this at bay. But at some point, it's just going to be easier. I think if you can suspend this on like turn 2, that's probably worth doing. But I'd say turn 4, turn 5, you'd be best just holding on and casting it normally, honestly. A single errant ephemeron, so this is kind of like one of the common suspend creatures. So it's 6 and 1 blue for a 4/4 flyer, and it has suspend 4 for 1 and a blue, which is perfectly good. Like second turn play to suspend this and be like, yep, now I'll have a 4/4 flyer in a few turns. So yeah, really surprised that actually there's only one of it, but yeah, I think it's perfectly good. And then 3 Riftwing Cloud Skates. So 3 colours and 2 blue for a 2/2 flyer. When it comes into play, you return a permanent to its owner's hand. So I say it every time, but it doesn't say non-land, so you can bounce lands if you want to. And like Errant Ephemeron, it's you can suspend it for only 2 mana. It's only got suspend 3, so it comes down slightly quicker. Yeah, overall, I think all these suspend creatures I think are pretty fun. I really like them. Then we have 2 Keldon Halberdiers. This is like the red common suspend creature. 4 cards in a red. 4/1 for 4/1 first strike. You can suspend it for only a single red mana. Suspend 4. Again, like it's really good. Like turn 1 play, I think, just to suspend that and get it in 4 turns. And then swinging them with a 4/1 first strike and haste is obviously pretty good, I think. And then 3 Viscerid Deep Walkers. So I kind of wish there'd only been 2 of these and maybe 2 of the Ephemerons, but anyway. So 4 and a blue, 3 2/3 weirdly it has kind of like a fire breathing ability. You can spend blue mana to give it +1/+0 to end of turn. And like the Halberdier, it's suspend 4 for only a single mana. So yeah, it's all pretty good, I think. Not as good as the Halberdier, I think, but it's fine. It's fine. And then a single Jora's Time Bug. Really wish there'd been more of this in here because it's so it goes so well with so many things in the deck. So 2 colors for a 1/2 artifact creature. Tap, choose a permanent you control or a suspended card you own. If that permanent or card has a time counter on it, you can remove a time counter from it or put another time counter on it. So Jora's this is like a really great card because there's so much of what's coming up in Time Spiral set synergizes so well because so many things use time counters. Because in Time Spiral we've got suspend cards. So you can use this to make them tick down faster and come into play quicker. And then in the next set, Planar Chaos, we've got cards with Vanishing that use time counters. So this is a way of adding time counters to them, so they stay around longer. So it does a lot of heavy lifting. The little time bug. Yeah, really good card. Again, really wish there'd been more than one in this deck. And then some non-suspend cards. These kind of feel like filling the space, honestly. So 2 Coal Stokers. I've always thought this is okay, honestly. 4 mana for a 3/3, so like Hill Giant stats. When it comes into play, if you cast it from your hand, you get 3 red into your mana pool. I think that's all right. Potentially play 2 things, then on turn 4 you play it, and then play something for 3. I think Coal Stoker's all right, actually. Yeah, I think it's okay. Maybe not great, but I don't know, I have a bit of fondness for it. I just think it's all right. 2 Giant Oysters is one of the time shifted cards, so it's like a classic reprint. I think from I want to say Fallen Empires. Is the set Giant Oysters originally from? It has the purple time shifted icon, which actually means it's modern legal if you ever wanted to play Giant Oyster in modern. So 2 colors and 2 blue. For a 0/3, you can choose not to untap it during your untap step, and then a whole bunch of text. Basically, it can, if you tap Giant Oyster, another tapped creature doesn't untap, and as long as it remains tapped, it gets a -1/-1 counter every turn. But if Giant Oyster leaves play or becomes untapped, you take all the -1/- counters on it. So basically, you have to like really commit Giant Oyster to like slowly killing a tapped creature. And it's 4 mana on its own, and it's only a 0/3. So yeah, very slow, very dirtly card, honestly. Not great in my opinion. I mean, very flavorful. Yeah, that's clamping down on something and kind of slowly crushing it, I guess, is the sort of like the narrative there. But yeah, very not great. Very not great. Great, yeah. Very slow. A single Sage of Epityr, so 1 blue mana for a 1/1. When it comes into play, you just look at the top 4 cards of your library and then put them back in the order. Yeah, perfectly fine ability, perfectly fine. A little boring, but fine, Rearranging your top 4 is okay, I suppose, setting up your next 4 turns. A single Clockwork Hydra, 5 mana for a 0/0. It comes in with 4+1 counters on it. Whenever it attacks or blocks, you remove a counter from it, but if you do, it also does 1 damage to any target. And you can tap to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So this is okay. Again, kind of slow and a bit dirtly, but it's fine. It's kind of a way of doing indirect damage, I suppose. It's okay, I think. So moving on from creatures now. So now look at the other spells in the deck. So apart from Suspend, the other big thing in this deck is a bunch of Storm, because Storm was brought back in Time Spiral, but like kind of fixed. Sort of, I would say. I think Storm is still like not I just don't think it's a very well designed mechanic. I think it's just very open to abuse. But like all these cards are kind of fine. And yeah, in this deck it's actually kind of fun because the implied strategy is you set up a bunch of suspend cards, and I guess you try and arrange it so they all pop off in the single turn. They all count as being cast, and then you play a Storm card, and then you get a bunch of Storm copies with kind of like not having to kind of cast a lot of spells technically in a single turn. I mean, you are casting the spells in a single turn, but they're ones you've set up. So it has like, it's quite a skill testing deck, honestly, to have all these things like go off at the same time. So yeah, I think it's in that regard, it's doing something quite impressive and quite fun. So we have 3 Empty the Warrens. So 3 cards and a red for a sorcery. Oh, that's the other thing. All the storm cards in Time Spiral, I think, are now sorceries. Because when Storm was first introduced in Scourge, I think they were all instants, or like the majority of them were instants, which meant you could cast them on your opponent's turn after they had cast spells, and then you would guarantee to get at least 1 copy. I guess they realized that's that's not the intent, so now they're sorceries. So usually now they're only gonna trigger off your spells. So like all the setup is up to you basically. So yeah, Empty the Warrens just makes 2 Goblin tokens and has Storm. Grape Shot, Infamous Grape Shot, 1 card and 1 red. Does 1 damage to any target and has Storm. Ground Rift, this is the one that no one, I don't think, Legacy Storm decks play Ground Rift. I might be wrong, but I doubt it. So 1 red, target creature without flying can't block this turn, it has Storm. And 2 Ignite Memories, 4 cards and a red. A player reveals a card at random from their hand, and Ignite Memories deals damage to that player equal to the card's converted mana cost, and it has Storm as well. So I get, like Grape Shot and Ignite Memories and Empty the Warrens are all very good. Ground Drift is a little weak, but that's okay. There's only 1 of them in the deck. Yeah, these are all good cards. And then we have a single careful consideration. So 2 cards and 2 blue. Instant. Target player draws 4 cards, then discards 3 cards. If you play the spell during your main phase, instead they draw 4 and discard 2. So there's a little kind of cycle of these cards where you can play them instant speed, but like the effect is kind of a little bit worse. Whereas if you play them as if they're a sorcery, the effect's slightly better. So this is an okay draw spell, I guess. Like if you need to at instant speed, like drawing 4 and then discarding 3 is fine if you desperately need to get like new cards. The thing is, like if you do it instant speed, you're drawing 4, discarding 3. That's not card advantage because you're already spending a card to do that. So in that regard, probably not great. You'd ideally want to play this usually as a sorcery. You can also, it can target any player as well. So if you were playing like a team game, or if you desperately wanted someone to draw discard cards for some reason, you could do that to your opponent if you really wanted to, I suppose. We have 2 clock spinning. I really wish there'd been a 3rd clock spinning, like the time bug. This card does a lot of heavy lifting. So 1 blue mana, for instance, has buyback 3. Buyback is back in Time Spiral. So buyback means you can pay the buyback cost as you play the spell, and if you do, instead of going to your graveyard, it goes back into your hand. But clock spinning is you choose a counter on a permanent or suspended card, and then you either remove that counter or put another one of those counters down. So it works with any kind of counter. It's not just time counters, which a lot of things in Time Spiral block use. It is any counter, which is kind of interesting. The fact that you can use if there's those weird kind of artifacts or permanents out there that use very specific counters, you could use clock spinning to build those up. I always think that's kind of a fun design. I really like clock spinning. I think it's just a really good card, and like for this kind of deck, it's kind of perfect, honestly. Because it's cheap as well, and it helps you generate a another storm copy, which is sort of the win condition. I think is the main win condition at least. Single Whispers of the Muse, so this is a time-shifted card. 1 blue mana, draw a card, has buyback 5. Yep, I think that's perfectly fine. Again, nice and cheap just to draw a card. If you want to buy back it, it's fine. So it's not so dead weight if you draw it late game. If you had 6 mana floating around, and you might, at least you can draw a card and still keep doing it. I suppose it's fine. A single Rift Bolt. Again, I say this a lot for this deck. I really wish there were more copies of this. This is basically just Lightning Bolt with Suspend. So you can either cast it for 3 to do 3 to a creature or player at sorcery speed, which is not ideal, or you spend it for just 1 red, and then it does 3 damage. Then it's sort of it's like I want Lightning Bolt. We have Lightning Bolt at home. The Lightning Bolt at home. It's okay. And then polish off these last few cards here. So we have 2 Claws of Gix, just 0 mana artifact, which is okay again for generating storm copies. 1 sacrifice permanent, you gain 1 life. It's fine. I think it's mostly in here just because it's a 0 cost card, and might help build up a storm count. And then Serrated Arrows as another time-shifted card, 4-mana artifact, comes to play with 3 arrowhead counters on it. So this is actually an example of something you could use a clock spinning on to give it more arrowhead counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are no arrowhead counters on Serrated Arrow, sacrifice it, tap, remove a arrowhead counter, put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So actually pretty good. This actually got reprinted in a dual deck as well, which was very surprising. But yeah, this is actually kind of a weirdly good little. I mean, it's not great. It's okay. It's to permanently weaken stuff by giving them -1/-1 counters. Yeah, I think it's all right. I think it's okay. Serrated Arrows. And then a single Dreadship Reef as a dual land. Taps to give you, well, it's not technically a dual land. Taps to give you 1 colorless, 1 and tap, put a storage counter on it, 1 remove X storage counters to add X mana of any combination of blue and or black to your mana pool. So it's a shame there weren't like kind of enemy color versions of this, like a blue-red version would have been okay, or this could have like maybe you could have actually splashed a black card in here, a couple of black suspend cards maybe to benefit from this. I mean, you've only got the one though, and it would be kind of slow and deadly. I think the card is fine. It's a good way just to build up, and then you have a big turn where maybe you don't want to suspend a card, you just want to play it normally. But yeah, I think Dreadship Reef is all right. Yeah, it's fine. So it could have been. So the thing is, like, the card selection in this deck is like it's okay. I think the problem is there's actually there's not enough copies of things that I would like there to be, as I've sort of stated. I don't think there's duff cards in here. These are just some things that would have been nice for them. Would have been nice to be in the deck. What I'm really surprised by, this is the card that should absolutely be in here, even just 1 or 2 of them, is Paradox Haze, because that is like so essential, I think, to a deck that uses like suspend cards. Because Paradox Haze gives you an extra upkeep. And yeah, it's super good. So your things tick down twice as quickly. So even just 1 Paradox Haze would have been amazing. Like this should have been here instead. I have no idea why Giant Oyster is in here. Should have been Paradox Haze, I think, definitely. Or if you needed a time shifted card to hit a certain like quota, Prodigal Sorcerer, just a classic ping creature, or Psionic Blast, which is a blue burn spell, sure, but like I think it's still better than Giant Oyster, honestly. Other potential cards could have had Wheel of Fate as one of the rares, maybe instead of Pardic Dragon. It's just Wheel of Fortune, but it has to be suspended. It's like one of these rare suspend-only spells, which are like kind of infamous because they interact with the rules in strange ways, because they have no mana cost at all. So they technically have a mana value of 0, which means like if they get hit by like a cascade effect or something like that, like it always goes. It's super weird. The biggest offender is was it Hypergenesis? I think there's a whole look into Hypergenesis. It's super weird. But this could have been, I think, an okay rare maybe. Sudden Shock, just as a burn spot, has split second, so it can't be responded to, which is, I think, it's kind of cool. It plays like this kind of time theme the deck's got. Same with Wipe Away, it's a bounce spell with split second. Browbeat, I thought as well, could be a alternate time shifted card instead of like Giant Oyster. Just because I just think it's a lot better. It's either a burn spell or you draw 3, and your opponent has choice over it, but I think that's still better than Giant Oyster. A lot of cards are better than Giant Oyster. I really have no idea why that card's in this deck. So in summary, so I think I'm very divided on this deck because like I do think it's good. I think the card selection is okay. It's a little disappointing there's not as many copies of I think key cards as there should be. But I do really like this deck because it just introduced this very fun suspend mechanic which I really like. Like I would use this as a kind of a springboard. I would kind of take out the storm stuff and focus more on the suspend cards and like use Paradox Haze and clock spinning and all that kind of stuff to make a really fun blue-red suspend deck, which I had a lot of fun with for ages. And like Time Spiral Block gave me then so many extra materials as it went on for building that deck. So yeah, so I think I regard this deck more fondly than I should, just because of the nice associations I have with it. That it was such a good benchmark for building a deck I had a lot of fun with. But that's so yeah, that's just my opinion of the deck, though. after sort of reviewing it. What are your thoughts after seeing the deck? Did you have this deck? Would you make any changes to it? If you've got any kind of stories or opinions or thoughts on this deck, please put a comment below. I always like reading people's comments. But I'll be back next time to look at the last Time Spiral pre-constructed deck. But until then, thank you for watching and have a great day.